δύο λόγια μόνο. Θα ήθελα να σας πω και να μοιραστώ μαζί σας ότι είχα την τύχη να δω την πρώτη παρουσίαση της Στέλλας σε ένα συνέδριο στο Ρέθινο που έβαζε πρακτικά τα ερευνητικά ερωτήματα της διατριβής της. Αισθάνομαι δύο φορές την καιρός που είχα την ευκαιρία να δω την ολοκλήρωση αυτής της δουλειάς και τα γνωστικά της βήματα. So, Professor Diani, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Δυστυχώς μιλάω πολύ λίγο ελληνικά και δεν καταλαβαίνω τίποτα ελληνικά.
Not true, not true.
Πρέπει να μιλήσω αγγλικά. Okay, I'm sure I missed. Can you hear me from, if I speak this way? Okay.
You can use the mic.
Well, I think if it's all right. Good. I think I'm sorry I missed completely the presentation. I understood there was mentioned in Syriza and a few other things, but I don't know how much this relates. Anyway, one of the key actors in the crisis, either for their presence or for their absence, have been the unions. And there have been, as you know, even before the crisis, there have been repeated arguments and discussions about the diminishing role of the unions or the real or presumed diminishing role, and whether it is a general trend, etc. And how, in particular, here I'm not going to offer any kind of general explanation or assessment of the role of unions, and even less so explanation for that. I'm only focusing on a very narrow aspect of it, namely, trying to figure out, starting thinking about how to look at the role of unions in larger context. Namely, unions are very often presented, portrayed as actors in themselves with the profile, a history. There are many good empirical arguments for carrying on along these lines. At the same time, unions, like any sort of activist practice, develop in a context which is not empty, which is also characterized by the presence of other parties, the interaction and other actors. The interaction between unions and parties is one thing which has been hugely explored, and as we all know, another aspect of the story is the interaction between unions and social movements, however we define them. But I think more generally we can think of and look at the unions precisely as, so to speak, located, embedded in much larger set of relationships. We know that people usually tend to do split into two categories: people who don't participate, people who don't join associations, and people that join very often multiple associations. So the idea, basically, what I'm going to show you is a preliminary attempt to develop. I mean, preliminary attempt is so to speak because actually this paper has been around. The first version of this paper was drafted in 2015, so it's quite shameful that I'm still at that preliminary stage, but I've been leaving it aside and playing, and then trying to think about how to develop proper measure, and of course, just to reassure you, I've done something else, otherwise it would be totally embarrassing, but anyway, okay. My inspiration is unsurprisingly, unsurprisingly because I'm colonized as a sociologist, I'm colonized by the Americans as well. It's a piece which appeared about 20 years ago in the American Sociological Review by Conwell and Harrison. And what they did, they were assuming, because they didn't demonstrate it, they were assuming that the influence in the US had drastically decreased since the war up into the 2000s, really. And certainly had a point, there is no very convincing argument. And they were questioning, they were trying to relate precisely the development of this negative development for the unions with the diminishing what they call it, diminishing embeddedness of unions in larger networks of civil society. To put it very shortly, the bottom argument was the influence of the union, among other factors, of course, is linked on the one hand, depends on the one hand, to the extent to which their members are also active in other social milieu, social environment, ranging from, not necessarily from politics, ranging from other kind of political groups, parties, of course, environmental movement groups, but also everyday life associations, parent teachers, voluntary groups, churches, etc. So the idea, at the same time, the influence may also be looked from the other side, namely how many, to what extent, members of other associations are involved in unions. And the argument is fundamentally that this type of exchanges, create the conditions for, on one hand, there are channels for legitimacy. The union activists are not a strange animal. There are people operating in different sectors. These exchanges provide ways to engage with local issues, to create, develop trust, sometimes to spread the point of view of unions into larger social environments, and all that might be seen on the one hand as a sign of influence, strength. At the same time, what they argue and they showed was that this level of involvement of union activists into American associations, US associations, had been diminishing over time. There have been many studies of unions of influence from the point of view of the elites, to the extent to which union leaders, etc., were linked to political elites. And this type of study took a bottom-up approach, looking at the grassroots, the influence, the more informal, subtle influence which spreads around this group. I try to do that using European Value Survey data for 5 waves in Germany, Italy, and UK. I hope it's not begging for your sympathy, but I try to look at Greece only had 2 waves of the survey, so it was not comparable in the same way. Anyway, first of all, the argument that unions would have lost so much confidence or influence, judging by data of the general public, is disputable. I know what you can see anyway, but fundamentally, Italy, I should have highlighted that, sorry, Germany, Italy, and the UK do not show a clear trend. Obviously, they don't show a clear, they rather show oscillation, swinging, slightly changing values, but apparently the level of confidence in the union is by and large set between 30 and 40% of the people quiet or strongly supporting unions. It's possible that the fall was before that. We're not talking about the same time frame that the Cornwall Diaries were looking at. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that's the first element. Second element, which is membership rates. Membership rates are notoriously difficult to calculate. People. Anyway, there are arguments that they are inherently flawed in many cases, because the figures come from the union, mostly come from the union themselves. There is also debates. I am neither competent nor have the time to go into this in detail. But anyway, what is here, there is a certain trend towards a reduction of the influence. In Germany, from 24, even 41% was down at the end of the decade to 16. In Italy, it goes down from 16% to 5%. UK, likewise, goes down quite substantially. Now, is there any The causes of this are multifarious. There is obviously important elements of the political offer in terms of the political strategy adopted by parties, including left-wing parties. There are elements very linked to the transformation of the workplace, the transformation of the job market, the transformation of the professions. For example, clearly the closing of most of the big factories in Western countries certainly doesn't create favorable condition for unionism. So there are all sorts of factors. As I said in the beginning, I'm not making any claim about fraudulent expiration. I'm simply interested in exploring very little, and this is a very little element. How to study this, how to look at this type of how to measure embeddedness, how to look for indicators of embeddedness. And Conwell and Harrison, they borrowed on organizational studies, organizational literature, and they spoke, I identified two different levels of embeddedness. One is they call it positional, and the other one structural. Positional was basically the extent to which union members they were linked to other associations and vice versa, in such a way that to grant the union the central place in network of influence within given society at different points in time. Basically, unsurprisingly, if all your members are members of organizations which in turn are peripheral in the network, your potential influence can be expected, all the rest being equal, to be smaller, more limited than if you are being too strong ones. The other structural embeddedness basically means that you got, through your members, you have access to a broad range of other organizations. So you can reach out in many different areas, regardless. So there is a vertical element, if you want, and then a horizontal element. I could put down the thing. This is what I said. Okay. Now, this is slightly more the rectangle positional for positional embeddedness. There are a number of things. These are technical details. If you're not interested or familiar with network analysis, it won't mean a lot. I will use one of these indicators, which is called corners, which are unsurprisingly measure the extent to which one set of organizations is core in the network. And the other one, structure, as I said, was, just saying average intensity of connection among unions of other types, and what I mentioned before, rates of union members who are also in others, and rates of members of other organizations who are also in unions. So it's a capacity. And on the one hand, you could look at it as a sort of a strategy, or it is an ability to penetrate other sectors, entrism, as they used to call studies party used to. Back in the day, we were very focused on that, or otherwise measure the capacity to attract, for the unions to attract support from other sectors of society. Good. Well, okay, this is just for the sake of illustration, but I know I need to spend time. This basically is an index. The intent, what you see here is an example of 14 types of organizations, the same in the rows and the columns. These are the ones that were asked in most of the European value surveys. Fundamentally, are you a member of A, B, C, D? And the connection is an index. You could measure the connection either looking at the absolute numbers of people who are claimed to have a double membership, but that would obviously bias the entire appreciation of connections in favor of the groups which are more numerous. So if you have 200, if a union attracts 200 people and say environmentalists attract 40, that inevitably gives. What we are interested in to see the stretch, the extent to which these ties distribute. So basically, this is an indicator. So Jacquard is not sounds more like a kind of French perfume, but it is not an indication, an index of basically which takes into account the strength. We don't have to dwell on that. And one example which you find that here is not actually Germany wave 5. I was wrong. It is actually wave 1 of the European value survey, and what it generates is, these are the network between different types of associations that is created by these overlapping memberships, and the unions are in this particular case, sorry, it's not to one anyway, it is beginning, we're talking about the beginning of the 80s, but that doesn't matter, sorry. I need all that, okay. This one is a type which shows the union in a semi-intermediate position. The size of the nose tells the relative coreness of these different groups, but if you only focus on the strongest ties, namely the tie which are based on the criteria, which is in criteria, you get another type of picture which is this one, and the unions end up being relatively marginal. Now, what I'm simply going to do, I show here, I do an operation which methodologically would be probably horrible, highly disputable, because I'm going to show how it is different, if there is a correlation at all between a series of the measures that I mentioned before, the amount of confidence that a certain country in the average expresses in union in a certain phase. And I said that there are 5 phases corresponding to the way from 1981 up to 2017. And the other indication will be precisely the amount, the rate of membership in unions in different points in time. And to see if there is any correlation between those two measures and the relative position of the unions based on these criteria. It's clear that there is a correlation because the amount of ties is affected, but the problem what matters is not so much the volume of ties, but the distribution of ties. Actually, we can skip this, and fundamentally, this is the reason why I say the methodology is horrible, because there are only, as of now, there are only 15 cases. 5 countries, 3 countries by 5. So this is a classic ecological analysis with all the fallacies of ecological analysis, to which you must start at a small number of ends. Bottom line for the moment, as I say, I'm illustrating a logical analysis more than claiming that these are particularly strong results. The first indication is there is very little correlation between the network position of the unions and the overall levels of approval. Again, we have seen level of approval has changed very little, so that's not particularly surprising. It's more interesting if we look at, we get some more results, I mean limited results again, but some more results, some significant results if you look instead at the membership rates. And what this table tells us is, first of all, that coreness matters, namely the average Jacqueline, that means the average intensity, I make it first, no, the average intensity doesn't matter, is not significant at all, but the position, the extent to which through their members unions are close to other important organizations affect also their ability to recruit, seems to. There seems to be at least a correlation. As you know, correlation is not causation. Again, I'm not making a strong argument about causation, but at least there is an element, it looks like there is an element of that. If we add, there is another element we want to add to the picture. These are basically coreness and average intensity are data referred to the measure that I mentioned. If we add the other two, namely union other and that other union other means percentage of people, members of the union, are also members of other organizations in general, which is general attitude of propensity. Other union means the opposite. Proportion of people, members of other organizations who are active in unions, and there are elements. It's not a great, well, not this, but it's fantastic option. It's an enormous account, which is 90% of the variance in play, which clearly suggests that there are obviously effects which are linked to the fact that there is a certain level on endogeneity in the analysis, but still, what I think is interesting is the fact that taking this type of limits into account, what this suggests that actually the location and the embeddedness created by these processes, which are not processes driven, are processes which are quite spontaneous, reflect the propensity of people to engage with groups, they seem to have an effect, and in particular the position in terms of coordinates. What we see is a curvilinear, not a linear relationship, it's a more curvilinear one, given by the square factors here, and otherwise what matters important seems to be the ability of the union to attract. Basically, union's membership rates go incrementally with union position at the core of civil society, at the corners, and the ability of unions, the ability, also the will of civil society organizations, with members of other civil society also to engage with unions is an important factor also in affecting the overall rates of recruitment. Next step, what should be? The next step should be to bring down, and I'm planning to do that, to break down the data into regions. This will mean to be able to rely not on 15 but on more than 100 cases, and this enables clearly to bring in other factors with the usual suspect. You have noted there is no control variable, there is no variable linked to class, levels of education, attitude, general attitude, to account for this type of positioning. Then you can, so this for those who are not familiar with the network, information of this kind, the network have a nice property, namely that you can play with data in two different ways. Basically, what you start, the kind of information that I'm using is fundamentally a standard data matrix, which you have the people and the activities that they do. Okay, exactly a standard data matrix. What you've seen before were the data that reconstructed the position of the unions in relation to other organizations by looking at using the first aspect of what we can call a duality process in Georg Zimmer's term, namely the fact that individuals are links between organizations. At the same time, you can reverse the argument and see and notice that membership in groups, organizations are bridges between people. We are unsurprising. We meet people, when we are part of groups, and we create. So that is, and if we can expect our relationship with people to be stronger, the more we share membership in different groups. Otherwise, we can expect the relationship to be weaker if, or at least less consistent with our membership are quite diverse. I can go to church Sunday and be member of the church parish committee, and but in the parish committee there may be somebody who is a member of the Communist Party, somebody who is a member of the Neo-Nazi League, and so there is a shared membership, other membership, which at least in principle should be quite incompatible. And this creates, this starts different dynamics. But anyway, so what we can do is, we can create fundamentally, use this play in reverse with this data, identify with the same logic that I showed you before, the series, the extent to which union members are part of larger networks. They are connected in some ways to other networks. There are fundamentally the question, we can reformulate the same question as before by saying, what is the position of other members of unions in each ego? What is the ego network? The ego network is the network of people to whom you are directly connected, and the ties between them. If you think of your contacts, you may have, sometimes you are connected to people who know each other very strongly and they are closely knit. Other times you are connected to people who are totally hostile or indifferent, unknown to each other, dispersed. What I did, I looked for and this is an indirect link, of course. I looked at union members. How many? I built up the structure of the ego networks of all the respondents in the survey, and to see how dense the network is, in reference to how heterogeneous it is in reference to union membership in particular, namely, are all the think of a specific guy, are all the people connected, are all the people in one's network entirely union members, or are they totally indifferent to unions? And that's what, and therefore these are measured. What is the logic? The logic is to try to measure to what extent precisely membership create potential for conversation. Now, obviously, these are data at the national level. So, it is a very indirect indicator. Because the fact that you and I, me and Marquis Separiado, we are members of a voluntary association for the protection of cats, doesn't mean that we know each other. He may be, I am a member in, assuming that I'm Greek, I could be a member in Thessaloniki, he is a member in Athens, it doesn't mean anything. You can, however, which is what I did, you can adapt thereby calculating these data for specific areas. If people are living in the same region, it's more likely that if they are part of a certain milieu, they are somehow, they do not, you can't assume they will know each other, but they will be more likely to be part of the same kind of flow of conversation, to the same kind of, exposed to the same influence. Of course, ideally you should do that at the city level or even neighborhood level, this would increase the probability. But then again, the question is more a matter of exposure to, and the same, to exposure to different types of influence, okay? Now, this is the case in Germany in way one, and why Germany was the first. I simply, I'm only going to show Germany for 1981 because it took me too much time to organize the data. There are some interesting things. Regarding the confidence in unions, it's not huge explanation. Here, the explanation is not huge. As I said before, what I'm interested in is it ties have some kind of role. Now, A067 is the question whether you are a member of the union. Now, it's not surprising that the members of the union have more confidence in the union, even so. But that is more a kind of a control variable, really. But what is interesting is, on the one hand, is, and this is tricky, is people who are mostly engaged, more frequently engaged in protest, claim to have used a different type of protest behavior. They are more likely to have confidence in unions, but people who are members of environmental and feminist associations, standard new social movement associations, seem to be, if anything, less likely to trust to confidence in union. Yet again, makes sense to some extent. What is interesting is this element here, density of union. This means basically that if your ego network, if your ego network is relatively dense, and consists more of union members, for example, this does not predict, it's a weak power really, but if anything, the relationship is negative. Namely, it is as if people in very dense network of union activists were growing skepticism, developing skepticism in the performance of the union in a significant way. This is quite, I think, intriguing. Next, element, you know, it's not the common. Yeah, confident, okay, confident, good. I'm finished. Okay. There it was, very original suggestions. Union members are more likely to have confidence in union, that's hardly surprising, unless they are in strong involvement in protests, increasing confidence. Involvement in new social movement organization reduces it. And then a dense ego network, including high share of union members, reduces confidence in union of party. So basically, if you are a party, is one country, one point in time. I'm going to run that on all the three countries and breaking for each, in this case, the data down in different territories and see what happens. But anyway, what this suggests is that there are that relational dynamic that somehow shape the impact, the overall impact of the unions in over civil society in general, and the public perception of unions in different contexts and different settings.
Professor Diani, for your engaging presentation, the impressive data that you shared with us. At this point, owing to the fact that we are running out of time, I will open the floor to the audience. Οπότε μπορούμε να ξεκινήσουμε τη συζήτηση για 10 λεπτάκια. Ο Μάξος.